Because if that person's scared and you don't provide them with the protection, they have to resign. There's that exposure there as well. In the States now, there are 2 or 3 corporate cases and a class action starting in that front, and there's a concern that this will come through into the UK. So there's that element of it as well. And then the third element, as an employer, is what we're seeing increasingly in the UK, is that people are scared, and quite rightly. So there's been this whole debate this week around the teachers and the national unions of teachers and whether or not they're going to come back. And it looks like, on my reading of it, is they wanted the primary schools back on the 1st of June. I don't think that's going to happen now, because and the real driver of that is people are scared, and it's because they just don't know. So there's that side of it. On the personal side, as a member of a workforce coming back to work, I want to feel looked after. I want to know, I'm going to go into my workplace to support my employer and feel exposed to risk. And I want to feel that you're actually, as an employer, you actually care, that you're actually doing something for me. And I want to know what that is. And also, there's particularly in areas like retail and factory where you've got non-desk workers. Actually, there's a real trouble communicating with those guys anyway, because they don't have corporate email. Even if they do, they're not sitting, looking at a screen or anything. So how do you deal with that, disenfranchised group? And I know, one stat that someone told me, actually, M&S have got 85,000 workers and only 4,000 corporate email addresses. So they can't communicate. That's even more problematic with GDPR as well now. You're meant to keep personal phone numbers on file to phone people. So how on earth do you do that? So those are the 2 bits that we've seen we can support. I think probably the best thing to do now is if I screen share. So this is going to be a bit clunky because I didn't know I was going to screen share, so I'm going to have to log into everything. And you know how these software demos go when you log in, but hopefully it'll go smoothly. I'm probably looking a bit vacant now because I'm just going into Safari to log in, and I've got about 50 tabs open. So.
John, I'm going to watch you practice this, but I am here if you need me to jump in.
That's fine. I've done it a couple of times now. It's all about logging into the right thing in the right place.
No pressure, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Thanks very much, Eric.
Bless Eric.
Eric, the trouble is, normally when you're not on the call, I blame you. Right, I'm just logging into the second part of the dashboard now, and this should. Oh no, I need to refresh. Right, okay, we're there. So, go back to Teams. PowerPoint. All right. First, next problem is work out how to share screens on Teams.
When you put the little bar where they're sort of closed, you'll see the little box with an arrow pointing up. On the Eric, you're better than me at these things.
I've got an arrow pointing up, but it's only allowing me to share PowerPoint for some reason.
Oh, yeah, you know what, John? On the Mac, you go to apply all those settings and
Eric,
checkbox.
Can't hear you, Eric.
Oh, wait, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, John, I had this problem. If it's the first time using Teams on a Mac, you've got to allow those privacy settings.
Oh.
And it doesn't come up. And you have to hang up the call and go back again.
Okay.
Eric, have you got it ready there?
Yep.
Okay. How about you share it and I'll talk through it, Eric?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's nice.
You share the app first.
Yes. Let me do the iPhone version.
You're like a wizard on these things, Eric. Amazing.
All right, John. Ready whenever you are.
Okay. So I talked to you about what the employee experience would be first of all, and the starting point for this is that the employee will receive a link via email or via text, which will take them to what is currently a web app, and once we've got it through the App Store, will be a native app. and it will invite them to click on the link to download the app and log in. Now, depending on the systems which the client, so the employer, is running, we can generate that login process straight from their HR ERP system, or from a bulk upload of contact details, or they can do it one by one manually. So what they will do is receive the link, and the first thing they'll do is they'll see this and be invited to log in. So if you log in now, Eric, and show that. The next thing that they then see is that we will have pre-populated all of their information from whatever's been provided. So there might be some bits they need to add in depending on what the company's provided us with. But the idea is to try and make this as sort of one click as possible. So it's all completely editable. People can go in there and update it or correct the information. And importantly for GDPR and all the other concerns that we've been hearing as well, it's very easy to switch on and off. So this device, this app, does share location data. We're currently using the technology which MIT made open source, which is the track and trace stuff which is being used in the States at the moment. So what we've got the capability of doing with that sharing is identifying if someone tells the device, tells the app that they've got COVID-19. I'll show you how they do that in a minute. It then identifies anyone else who has been exposed to that person within the time they've been infected, and then we can notify them of that. But we have to give them the ability to turn that off. So we've got share my location generally, or just track my location only within working hours, or you can turn it off so that employee feels protected. It's also worth saying that when VMware, the UK company that's creating the NHS app, have the source code ready, we will integrate that as well, or instead. We've been having conversations with their CTO over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and they've been really cooperative actually in helping us do this. And what's also transpired from that is what we suspected very strongly. The NHS app will not do any of the stuff that we're about to show you in this app. The NHS app just reports location and notifies people. But what it doesn't do is give any kind of visibility of a workforce or anything like that. So anyway, coming back to this, all the person has to do then to register is confirm their details. So click that button there, and then that just takes them straight then to homepage. So this is the homepage of the app. And again, something that we were very keen to do is just make this as painless as possible in terms of use. So rather than take people through a long questionnaire to say, do you have these symptoms of COVID-19? Everyone now is I think, experienced enough to know what the symptoms are. So we're just asking quite simple questions here. At the top left, we have that blue button, which says, I have not had COVID-19 symptoms. What we are suggesting to employers is that they ask their employees to click that every morning before they go into work. Just because psychologically, if you wake up with a bit of a sniffle, you might think, I'm just going to go into work. But if you've actually got to click a button to say, I don't have any symptoms of COVID-19, you might just think about that a bit more and say, well, hang on a minute, I'm not so sure here. So that's the first button there. I think the other buttons are then advisory apart from the red one. So if we just go through the advisory ones, someone I live with has COVID-19. It then tells you, what should I do next? What it does also, so it gives you then information, which is, first of all, around NHS guidelines. So you can click on that link and it will take you into the NHS website. We're keen not to provide medical advice ourselves because we're not medically qualified. So it's just what the NHS are updating. What we're also able to do through the app, and it depends on what the employer wants to do, but we can provide all of the standard publicly available contact details. So 111, contact your NHS GP. So if they provide us with the number, they click on that link and the phone will dial. And we also have an arrangement with a company called ZoomDoc, and this comes down to the employer because there's a cost associated with this. If you click the ZoomDoc link, you can have an online video consultation within half an hour. So if you've got someone with really serious symptoms and you really want some reassurance, you can have an online video consultation. Actually, for a higher fee, they'll actually get someone to your door within about 90 minutes. So you could actually have a house visit from a private GP through the app within 90 minutes. This also, of course, integrates with the other side of that. So the moment anyone's clicked anything that says that they could self-isolate, to self-isolate, then the employer gets a notification they've self-isolated. And then if you go back to the home page, Eric, Then on the home page, when we get back there,
there you go.
On the home page there, you can see a countdown has started for self-isolation days left, so the employer and the employee could see that. There's also the ability then, if the employer is providing it, to schedule a test, and that again will integrate with whatever occupational health process is already in place. And we've got another partner actually who has provided a whole sort of series of back-end integrations into pretty much anything, so we can organise that if it's available. And at the bottom there, what we've got is information which in effect keeps you in touch with your team. So if you click on that, it tells you who's working from the office, provides you with their contact details, or who's self-isolating, or who is working from home. So again, you can contact all of those people. If you go back to home again, Eric, please. Now, the other really important one is when you click the red button, I think I have COVID-19. Again, what should I do next? It's giving you all the support that you need. And again, in the same way as living with someone, it gives you everything that you need to do to get help. And it makes you feel looked after by the corporate. So Zoom Doctors on that one as well. Finally, within this app, what it's also providing is the ability for the employer to communicate. So at the top there, we have a notification button. And what that enables the employer to do is either provide advice. So in this one, we said, okay, there was a recent outbreak in an office. I think one of those notifications, it provides advice to say, there's been a recent outbreak. This is what's happened. Or it provides advice to say, this is what we're doing to protect you. Here is where you find your PPE, and all of those types of things. And there's also a news function, which can be also controlled either by the employer themselves. In this instance, we're just taking a feed from the BBC website, but this can be corporate news as well. So I'll show you on the other sort of dashboard type app how easy that is to set up. So that's what the employer sees as the kind of corporate policy to say, this is how we're protecting you and supporting you when you come back into the workplace environment. On the other side of this, I mean, what this is doing, of course, is gathering a lot of data around who has COVID-19 and who doesn't. So now if we go to the employer's dashboard, then we can see exactly what they can see. So
let me just stop and start the screen share.
Okay.
For some reason, the screen share, my menu jumps up and down.
This is really interesting because particularly in the north, we've got a lot of manufacturers now reopened.
Well, yeah,
and the shipbuilding yards and all, not the shipbuilding, but the Port of the Tyne and all of that sort of thing, which will be really fascinating. I've got a contact actually with the chief exec of A&P Group, which is here on the Tyne, a guy called David McKinley, who I think it would be great to get into some of those businesses now who don't know how to handle what they're up against. Workmen are back on the roads, they don't know how to communicate with them.
I mean, one of the things, particularly with a factory or any kind of closed-in environments, we've been doing a lot of work with the oil and gas industry actually, and the marine part of that, getting oil rig crews backwards and forwards. And the problem that they've got is that particularly in an enclosed environment like an oil rig, if you get one instance of it, you've got to shut down the whole rig, get everyone off it, deep clean it, and then get someone back out, which is tremendously expensive. And similarly in a factory, if you get one incident, but if you can track and trace who has been exposed, then potentially all you need to do is isolate that shift or the group of people that have been exposed rather than shut down the whole thing, because you can see much more clearly where the illness has gone. So from the point of view, from that kind of cost saving, that's a real sort of urgent benefit, if you like.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Now what we're looking at, this is the dashboard that you would see as an HR department or as a health and safety exec potentially. If you then log in then to that, Eric. So what we've got here then is a summary of that data. One of the things that we're quite conscious of, and my background is actually in marketing and interpreting marketing data, and it's exactly the same problem. If you have a big pile of data, it's no use to anyone unless you can summarize it and see the bits of information that you need rather than see the whole thing. And that means, what we realize is actually the stuff that this dashboard shows will vary slightly according to the industry that we're dealing with. So this one is quite a general dashboard, really. The idea being it shows you the type of stuff we can show, but what we recognise is that we'll probably need to bespoke it quite a bit, depending on the problem that the particular employer is facing. So just to talk you through here, what we've got in the top left corner there is just a summary of what the business might look like. So you can see, based on what's been reported through the app, you've got 20 full-time employees working from the office, 450 teleworking, and 28 isolated in this example here. Then we represent that graphically there. So again, graphs are quite useful at showing you where you've got a problem if you suddenly have a big bar. And then to the right of that, we've got it presented by department. So again, you can see if there are any particular issues in any particular teams, if you're particularly light on resource. What we've got in the bottom left-hand corner here is something which is a bit clever. This is a prediction. The resource which you're likely to have available in 3 or 4, and hopefully we'll extend it out to 5 or 6 weeks' time as we get the algorithm working more effectively. And what it's doing is 2 things. It's taking a feed from the app to say who's self-isolated and then calculating when they're coming back to work. But it's also taking account of external factors like the R number, for example, and concentration of COVID in the particular region to try and make a prediction to say, okay, fine, how many people will be self-isolating in 3 weeks' time? So they haven't done it yet, but how many will be? Is the curve up or down? And then what it also does is takes information from a variety of sources, but mainly the ERP system to say, okay, fine, how much resource would you normally have available at that particular time? And then just gives you 3 curves to compare the 2. So what you can see there is the blue line is required resource, the light grey line is back to work, and the darker grey line is self-isolated. And in this instance, what you can see is that there's a big gap in week 2 because the gap between the blue line and the back to work line at the bottom there is the wrong way round. So from that point of view, as an employer, you would be looking to address that, right now. So either looking for temporary staff to fill the gap or doing something to shift that resource requirement into week 3 rather than week 2. So that's kind of looking forward thing and avoiding problem. Bottom right there, we've got a map. Again, this comes from our work with oil and gas. What's really important for them is that they know 2 things really. They know what the outbreaks are like on oil rigs, and also they know which vessels are nearby, and also what the status of those vessels is. So actually, this integrates with a thing called marine shipping, which gives you live tracking of vessels going out to oil rigs. So what we're able to do is show a vessel on its way out and one on its way back. And if there's an instance, an infection which occurs on a vessel, well, then we know where it is, and it can be directed to go wherever the relevant facility is to deal with that. And at the same time, if there's another vessel somewhere which might be moving a crew back or moving a crew elsewhere, and we can see that doesn't have an infection on it, we can redirect it to whichever oil rig it needs to go to. This is also meant to deal with people, retailers as well, where you've got lots of different retail outlets. Again, you can map those onto this map, and it cross-references with data from WHO to identify how much of an outbreak there is in the particular region, and also data from the app. So what you can do is at a glance identify any kind of location where there's an actual problem within the workforce because there's a high concentration of isolation, or where there's likely to be a problem because you can see that in the general population there's people who are self-isolating or people with an outbreak. This is from the WHO data. So that's that dashboard. What we then also have is a bit more of that's kind of like an overview, and then we've got something which is a bit more of a specific resource dashboard here, and that's designed to address problems where you've got complicated shift patterns and you need to know who's available from to do a shift, and this comes from sort of real conversations actually with people that we know who, well, a friend of mine, his son is working in Sainsbury's and actually got COVID-19. And one of the things that he's explained, and actually I've taken the time to go into Tesco's and some of the other stores to verify that it's the same there, but one of the things which he explained is that at that level where he's kind of like, he's a student, he's a part-time shelf stacker, and he comes in, and at that level his immediate manager until recently, was managing the shifts on the back of an envelope, quite literally, and even quite often not writing it down because he kept it in his head. So, when he went off shift, his shift manager would say, "Can you come back in on Tuesday at 4 o'clock to fill this shift?" And he'd say yes, and that was the shift kind of sorted, and lots of notes and things like that. This has suddenly got a lot more complicated because now that shift manager will have a shift starting in a couple of hours' time. He doesn't know who's self-isolated, he doesn't know who's turning up, and he doesn't know who else is available to work if he's got a resource gap. So this is designed to solve that problem. And again, in recognition of the fact that most of this is done on the back of an envelope, what we've actually decided to do in this instance is just have the ability to export all available shifts into a spreadsheet, so he can see who's turning up to work, who's isolated themselves, and if there are other people available to fill those gaps, he can see their contact details on this spreadsheet, or send a notification to them via the app to ask them to come into work for that shift. So people can make themselves available for an extra shift or not. They can isolate themselves and everything else, and then the shift managers can see that here and coordinate that resource. As I say, we've done it on the spreadsheet, but also we can interface this through an API into a resource management system as well. So we've got that data there. We've then got a slightly more granular version of that graph where we can see people coming back to work as well. And here you can click on it and see who. So it just takes you a bit, one stage further into that. The next sort of screen down, actually, which is a test tube blanked out on that left-hand menu there, what that will do is integrate with occupational health processes. So actually, I was just on a call today where we were discussing, which employers are beginning to test and which ones aren't. Oil and gas, they're testing everyone at great expense. In some instances, like the groceries, they're not testing anyone. But where there is an integration and they need to coordinate that testing process, then this will interface with the occupational health processes, which are organising that test. And as of the call this morning, we can even source the tests as well. So what that would do, by clicking on that, you can see, okay, who is being tested? Do I need to invite other people to be tested? Who's requested a test, and where are they in that process? And that also applies to people who've been tested with the antibody test as well. So you can see, okay, which ones of my workforce are immune. On the next menu down, then we've got the management process. So down here is managing people who are in the app. So that top screen there, that top part of the screen, is just showing you who's using it and how much they're using it. And you've got the ability in the top right-hand side to remind people. So, quite often with this type of thing, people don't bother to register or don't use it that much. And we can see that here. What we can do is just click the bulk remind button to say, look, could you please use this app? It's for your safety and our safety, and we just need you to do it. So it just reminds them to do that. Where have you gone, Eric?
Yeah, I think it's clicked.
Press the button.
Yeah, I think it just clicked off.
What we've also got on that employee management screen then is, how you add employees. And there's 3 options there. You can click and do it by your ERP system, which just, again, you tell it which ERP system you're using and enter your specific one, and it will connect to that, pull the employee details out, and then communicate with them in their preferred way of communicating. You can also add an employee individually just by dropping and drag and entering details, and you can also bulk upload from a spreadsheet and just drag it there, and it will send out the invites automatically as well. Once they've been invited, what you then get is the chart below, so you can see all the information that you have about them there. And you can see if there is a button that says invite, you can see that they haven't actually uploaded the app, and you can invite them again, or you can resend it, and then you have all their details there. Okay, and then the final area, the other area is communication. So you've seen the front end of that communication, if you like. This is the back end of it. So if you click the add news button, first of all, that's where you can add corporate news. So that might be the CEO's, a letter from the CEO, or it might be just something motivational, but something which is just a news feed to keep people involved. Where it's more urgent, you can add a notification. So if you go back to that notification, you can add a notification there. So it might be there's an emergency or a case in your area or a corporate announcement, which again appears that bell where you click on it, and in the app it will actually be a proper notification which appears on your device. So that's, if you like, the communication method, and it's designed to be as straightforward to administer as possible. And we can take things like RSS feeds into that instead if you don't want to be bothered with continual corporate updates, or a mixture of the two. And then the final bit, which is at the bottom, is we've got national statistics coming in. So that's from World Health Organization at the moment. And the purpose of that really is to compare your own stats as a business with what's happening nationally, because clearly if you're sort of underneath that curve, then clearly you're performing quite well. But more importantly, if your employees are actually above the national averages, then there's something to be concerned about. And from a liability point of view, something that you need to be aware of, and taking measures and demonstrating you're taking measures to do something about it, so that you're making sure that workplace environment, at best is no worse than the outdoor environment, and hopefully is better than the outdoor environment because you're taking more precautions. So that's the sort of employer's dashboard, and actually this is continually evolving around things that we can do with it, because there are so many people that we're talking to who are doing lots of different stuff as well. That's as it is at the moment.
My goodness, it's absolutely fantastic. Margie knows what I'm like, but I've got a million. My first stop immediately in my head, I've got two. One is Poundland, UK. The other one is Port of the Tyne, here in the northeast. But the other thing I'm thinking, have you ever worked with Innovate UK, John?
What the NHS version of that? NHS.
No. Innovate UK. So just to give you a little bit of background, aside from my retail of what I do now, because this could open a whole host of opportunities.